Good morning and welcome to our metaphysical class, which has been for the last year and a half at 10 o'clock on Sunday mornings, but now we moved it to Wednesday so that you who want to join us can have the experience of connecting during the middle of the week. So we want to welcome you this morning to the class who are with us live, and to you that will see this later as it is recorded and available to you as a download. I'd like to begin this morning with reading out of the Unity Daily Word, and I think it's important that we realize that we are entering into that time of what we call Easter. So I thought this would be appropriate because it's called I Am Safe in a Garden of Divine Love. Now, the garden to me has always been consciousness, the ground of consciousness. And of course, what do we do in a garden? We plant seed. And the kind of seed we plant brings forth fruit after its own kind. That's divine law. What you plant is what you get. It's also called karma. And there's a positive and spiritual side of karma as well as a corrective side of karma. So I thought I would just read this to you this morning for contemplation, that is talking about the night Jesus shared a final meal with his beloved students when they went to pray alone in the Garden of Gethsemane, anticipating arrest. In his humanity, Jesus must have felt afraid, perhaps angry and betrayed, or disappointed. His disciples could not even stay awake with him. But in his divinity, he knew he could never be alone or harmed. It says, "Not my will, but thine be done," is what his prayer was. And he surrendered to a larger purpose. He said, "In my darkest hours, I remember too that I'm never alone, and I offer myself to be used for the larger purpose. I'm safe in a garden of divine love, strength, power, and wisdom. The garden of God is within me." This is a very wonderful saying for today, that you that are in the garden of your consciousness, of your mind, who may feel afraid, may be angry and betrayed and disappointed, that it says that we can go to a much larger picture. And in the darkest of hours, remember that we are never alone, and offer myself to be used for the larger purpose. And most of all, I am safe in a garden of divine love, strength, power, and wisdom. The garden of God is within me. So today, what are you planting in your garden of consciousness? What kind of seeds? If you're planting seeds of fear, then fear is going to become the emotion. If you're planting a seed of anger, you're going to be angry with life, with yourself, with those around you. You're not going to be pleasant to be around because you're bringing forth after the seed that you're planting in your garden. But this says that when you go to the higher purpose of your garden and plant seeds of, I am never alone, I am one with all there is, I'm connected to my divine creator, I am whole, and I am safe in the presence of divine love and wisdom. The scripture is Matthew 26:39. "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not what I want, but what you want." So I'm sure we could all have the prayer, I wish this time would pass, would have never happened, but it is here. It is in our garden. So let us take responsibility of what we plant in this garden of experience today. If you'll join with me in meditation, wherever you are, with your feet flat on the floor if you're sitting, however you're positioned, and just feel the grounding into the earth as a divine spiritual being. Take in a couple or 3 deep breaths, breathing in the new energy that is breaking through, more intensified than ever before. And how do I know that? Because there's breakdown more intensified. The more intensified there is breakdown of systems is the breakthrough that is more intensified. So this is the great and the terrible day of the Lord, it says. This is the best of times and the worst of times. So you're living an experience that is not one-dimensional, but it is multidimensional. And choose this day, what dimension do you want to live on? A dimension in the lower parts of human consciousness where fear and anger can find you? Or will you move into the higher states of divine love, divine purpose, and divine will be done in my life? Take in a deep breath. Go into the garden of your imagination, however you want to imagine a garden. The garden I see today is a beautiful garden. And the garden is just across a little bridge. I'm on the other side of the garden. But in this moment, I choose to walk across that bridge that has been made for me into the garden. Into this garden is beautiful plants and leaves that are blowing. And as I walk into the garden, I feel the leaves barely touching me as they welcome me into the garden. The garden is filled with white golden light. This golden light is soft, makes me feel comfortable and safe. It is the color of divinity, not only in me, but surrounding me. As I move deeper and deeper into the garden, I hear the singing of the birds, singing songs of welcome and joy. Into the garden, I find the presence of love, the presence of peace, the presence of abundance, of life. I'm pulled into the center of the garden where I find a little temple. It's an humble but beautiful little temple. I'm compelled to go into this temple. I begin to climb the stairs to the temple. As I enter the door opens effortlessly, allowing me into this beautiful temple. The same white golden light that's on the outside is on the inside. I even feel more safe, more beautiful. I feel more of the presence. Inside the temple in front of me is an altar, a place where I can take all of my burdens, all of worry, anxiety, fear, depression, and place it upon this altar. Take a breath, exhale, and let go of anything that is not serving you, that is not bringing you joy and the peace and the love that you inherently are today. Exhale again, letting go of more of what you need to let go of that's not serving you. Take in a deep breath, a breath that makes you feel free, the breath running freely through your body, realizing that it's just not human breath, but it is divine spirit pneuma breath, the life force of God. Awakening every cell of your body, every organ of your body, running through your brain as the mind of the universal Christ consciousness. Feeling this freedom, this more lighter side of spirituality. Leaving those things upon the altar, you turn around and begin to leave the temple. Through the door, down the steps, back into the garden, feeling lighter and lighter, more peaceful. This peace is a peace that passes your understanding of the times in which you live. There are no whys in this temple, for faith never asks why, for faith is. Faith always is. Again, coming through the temple, you go out into the garden and walk through the garden, bringing this wonderful feeling with you. You come to the bridge, coming back over the bridge, and coming back into the awareness of the space in which you occupy at this time. Let us together take a deep breath. Hold it and exhale. Deep breath. Exhale. I am love, for God is love. And in love there is no fear. For I've not been given the spirit of fear, but of love and of a sound mind. And so it is. Take a deep breath, exhale, and slowly come back into the awareness of the space in which you are in. All right, what I'm doing is I'm talking the first part of the class on what I feel is more present truth. In other words, the truth of the time we're living in. And then if Spirit so guides, we'll go into our book that we've been studying, although I feel it's more important that we hear what the Spirit is saying to the community of light beings. I don't know what else to call it. We call it the church, we call it the community, we call it many different things, but it is those who are on the awareness of the spiritual path toward awakenment and enlightenment. And to you, we want to recognize this particular time to help you to move very easily and swiftly on your path, that you enter what I call the no path. You know, everybody thinks the path is going to get them there. No, the path is only to bring you to awareness. Because many people are on a path in which there is still the belief in lack. In other words, I'm not where I need to be, I need to get there. I need to get love because I don't have it. I need to get abundance because I don't have it. I need to get health because I don't have it. And what we're inviting you is to come from a different starting point, a different source, a place in which we are moving from faith. Faith is the cornerstone that builds the ecclesia of the church. That's why Peter is first called out by Jesus, who is faith of all of the 12 disciples and all of the 12 powers. It begins with faith, because faith takes us to a higher atmosphere of our consciousness where we are reminded that we're already whole, we're created perfectly in the image of the divine, and that all things that ever could be already is dwelling in that place of spirit or divine consciousness. So, another thing I want to say too while I'm thinking about it is we want to also honor this time that we're entering in. I believe it's today in the Passover for those who are of the Jewish faith and the rest of us who also have entered this time we call Eastern Christianity. But it was a time in which the children of Israel had a plague coming through the land. And they said, go and take the blood of sacrifice and put it over the doorpost, and the plague would pass over you. So today, blood represents light. That's what blood is. It's congealed light. When you put light into a dense third-dimensional frequency, it turns into the substance of blood. So light is blood. So let's say putting the light of truth over the doorposts of our consciousness, that the plague passes over us. It's called Passover. So today may the plague of our time pass over your house and over your ancestry too, because many of you realize that you stand for all of your ancestry back and forward. So we just want to honor this time of Passover as well as the Christian time of Christianity in which we go through the death, burial, and resurrection. And we'll talk about some of that on Sunday and how that metaphysically we look at this idea of these tremendous steps that we're going through right now of the dying out of the old, the bearing into the cocoon of the subconscious to be changed, and the resurrection to become the new creation of God in the earth. So don't miss Sunday, because we have a lot of wonderful things to say. So what I want to talk about for just a little bit is called, what is the difference in a tipping point and a turning point? I'm going to start out with a quote by Lao Tzu, a 6th century Chinese philosopher. And he says, if you do not change direction, you may end up where you're heading. Well, I had to think about that just a little bit. If you do not change direction, you may end up where you're heading. You know, I am hearing so many different voices about this time. There is everything on the internet, Facebook. There is many well-known spiritual speakers and teachers who are teaching a completely different perception of what is going on today. Everything from conspiracy theorist ideas all the way to a more spiritual point of view of this thing, and everything in between. To the point you could be very confused on which one is going to be the one that you're going to listen to. Well, I want to remind you, the first thing to listen to is to your own innate intelligence and intuition. That's the voice that you need to connect to. It's called the still small voice. It's called intuition. It's called many different things on the spiritual level, but it is what is going to guide you. So, I enjoy listening to everybody's ideas, but I don't immediately qualify their ideas as something I believe. But I listen to it, and then I put it into a neutral place, and I wait to see if it awakens my own innate intelligence. In other words, does it resonate? Does it resonate with something that is already in me? And that's what all of us who are facilitators, so-called teachers, I prefer facilitators, are doing, is we're trying to awaken your own inner intelligence, helping you to remember what you have forgotten. So when we look at tipping points, we're looking at a more linear path. Now remember I said a while ago that the path leads to the no path. What I mean is we think we have left our connection with Creator. We believe that we are separate from Creator, and we've looked at all these religions to get us where we think we're not. And that has not worked. That is a continuous thing that will never be accomplished before transition of death. And the only way that we can get this in a mortal experience is to wake up in the mortal dream and remember what we think we lack, we need to get, already exists. I call it in the vertical. In the vertical. So this is a very important place for you to come from right now, is the place that anything that I pray for or ask for has already been done, even before I prayed or asked it to be done. So your prayer should be, O Divine One, Creator, God, whatever you choose to call your higher power, help me to remember what I have forgotten in this moment. Help me to connect with what I believe I've been disconnected from that I have not been. So what I'm saying, that the path to no path is into the awareness that I have never left my position in the Creator. It never happened. We just believed it happened. And then we built religions to qualify those beliefs by telling us that we're born in sin, we're born with a need, and that they have the way to help us to fulfill that need. And I don't know about you, but I, as a young person seeking, I ran around to this church, this group, this message, that group, and I never found the absolute in any of them. I'm glad for what I gleaned from all of them, but it never was the it that I was looking for. And when I finally found the it I was looking for is the it that's in me that's looking for me, to remember it. That changed everything decades ago in my ministry. And I stopped the path to attain something I didn't have to a path that awakened me, that I am always whole in the mind that created me, the mind of the divine. So let's look at this idea of tipping points. Tipping points basically go linear. So the best illustration I could give you would be, let's look at boiling a pot of water. Let's see how this tipping point thing works. When we place the pot on the burner, the water doesn't boil instantly. Instead, it's a process. What we see at first is a change that's so light that it may not even look like anything is happening. So we watch and we wait. Degree by degree, the water gets warmer. The thermometer may be 195 degrees, then it goes to 200 Fahrenheit degrees, then it goes to 207, and precisely at 211.0 degrees, something extraordinary begins to happen. While the water still looks pretty much like it did when we turn on the heat, this something that happens is very subtle. It's on the subtle level. If we look closely, we see a few small bubbles have formed on the inside of the pot. With the rise of just one more degree, from 211 to 212, we see a big change. All of a sudden, bubbles appear everywhere in the pot, and the water erupts into full-on chaos. You know, this is not, I know that we want to perceive this as something that wasn't happening, that just happened in the last few months. But that's not true. This has been going on in the subtle parts of our consciousness for a long, long time. It's just been so gradual and so subtle that we didn't get it. Now there has been visionaries and people that's been able to look ahead that tried to tell us these things. I would like to put myself in that number of those that for the last 30 years I've been talking about chaos precedes transformation, and how that the divine was ordering disorder for the purpose of an opportunity to grow and to evolve into this place of awakenment that we call it, or enlightenment that is there. But you know, people heard it. People sometimes responded to it to a certain level, but it was too much in the future. The ego whispered in the subtleness of their minds, you don't have to worry about it today. Today is fine. You don't have to worry about it tomorrow. Somewhere down in the future, this is probably going to happen. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it has nothing to do with me right now. And the ego used that to keep us from working in the subtleness of this thing. If we had, it probably would not be happening. If we'd have listened to what Spirit was trying to say back in the early 80s, I believe, was a time of a great change and a great transmission that came upon the planet, really starting in 78 and 79. And by 80, there was a full-fledged kind of opening of the spirit window in which light began to flood through to those who were ready to receive it. But it was in the subtleness. And if we would have listened to things, this is why many of us have been drawn, such as Some Energetics, but many others around the country in the last couple of decades have moved into what's called subtle energy work. This is the reason. And again, a lot of people's not taken us seriously. Many people haven't, who said, okay, we want to use our tools, our modalities to work in the subtle etheric field energy. No, people said, I want it work on my body. My body's in pain. I don't want to feel pain anymore. My body is this. My body is that. I'm looking for people who are looking in the physical, where I'm experiencing feeling an illness or disease or a pain of some kind. And when we came along and said, oh no, this started a year, 6 months, 9 months before, as it was a mispatterning in the etheric body, people weren't that interested, because the five senses couldn't put embrace that idea, because the five senses is I don't feel that. I don't know that process is what I want to say. I didn't know the process, how the pain got here. I just know the pain's here. Take care of it. I don't know how the disease showed up. I just went to the doctor, and the doctor says you have a disease. You have cancer. You got 8 months. You got a year. You got 6 months. Whatever it is, that's the starting point in which we start with. But we don't realize that started in the very subtle parts of ourselves. This is why it's important to use the subtleness of vibration and frequency. Well, the truth is we just didn't, at least enough of it. Some did, but it didn't reach critical mass enough to cause us to have a turning point. Instead, we followed the tipping point. So let's look at this for just a moment. The key here is that a small difference was all it took to push the water to the boiling point. And that's what happened maybe in the last year. I do believe probably it was going on in October, November, especially December. I know I was very ill. I know a lot in this community had a lot of illness around Christmas time. So something was showing up then as a huge warning that something big was going to happen that wasn't going to just affect a few individuals, but was going to infect the whole globe. Again, we just didn't get the message because we brought it and located it to us. It's about me. And we wanted to take care of ourselves. And we didn't get the bigger picture that this is trying to prepare us to deal with something that was going to be really huge as we're dealing with at this time. So the tipping point is very interesting because the tipping point follows the linear line of thinking. And the tipping point has been around for a long time in such things as mathematics. It suddenly burst into our everyday vocabulary around the year of 2000 is when it became real popular. I remember Gore talking about the tipping point in climate change. And it actually was coined by Malcolm Gladwell's book on the same name, Tipping Point. The tipping point is a powerful exploration of what triggers change in society and how those changes can ultimately shift our everyday world. Gladwell defines the tipping point as the moment of critical mass, the threshold of the boiling point. Now, the thing about the tipping point that I want to talk about, it is often used to describe the point of no return when evolving conditions reach a point or a place in time where they no longer support the status quo. It's at this point that the original condition no longer exists and a new one appears. This is precisely what happened in our example of the boiling water. At 212 Fahrenheit, the molecules began to behave in a way that reflected the new condition. For this purpose of this talk today and of this class, a tipping point can be thought of as a gathering of conditions that creates a point of no return. And we talk about a point of no return, it's generally not in a good way. So tipping points would be more about nature's answers to life's extremes. So how do we use tipping points? In the mainstream media, they're used to describing conditions that range from how much longer the world's economics can hold up against the mounting strain of debt, to how many people in the United States can remain out of work before the taxes that run the nation become insufficient, how far the relationships, say, Israel and Iran can deteriorate before war becomes inevitable. This is moving us toward a tipping point in which something that is subtly happening comes to a point that it changes everything. How much can global warming increase before we reach the tipping point where the earth can no longer sustain life? I hear that all the time on the media. We got 12 years. We got 10 years. There's just a certain amount of time that we have before life cannot be sustained on the earth. And I'm going to show you we want to do something before the tipping point. And I say that's now. So as I mentioned earlier, before we ever reach a tipping point of no return, nature allows for a shift that leads to a new outcome. So you don't have to follow the tipping point of global warming all the way to the point that the planet is not habitable for the human race. We don't have to wait until there is a global war that destroys the earth. We don't have to wait until the stock market folds up to the point that we have no retirements and we have no investments that we've worked years and years for. This is the power of consciousness. We have been talking about this, and many of you listening to me today have been a lot of years, some of you decades, into the teachings of the power of the mind, the power of thought, the power of intention. It's time to use these, not just learn about them, but to use what we have learned about and step up at this particular time. Regardless of how much we believe we've mastered the forces of nature or insulated ourselves from the elements, the fact remains that we're a part of nature itself. We always have been and always will be, and today is no different. How do we know this? Lunar cycles to influence the menstrual cycles of a woman's body, the power of day and night to influence the cycles of sleep, or the power that the lack of natural light has on the depression and suicide of people where sunshine is so scarce. Even in a world of high-rise offices and apartments where it's common for people to go for days without touching the earth under their feet and feeling the rays of the sun bathing on their skin, it's clear that we're deeply enmeshed with the rhythms of nature that we are out of touch with. And it's because we are so deeply connected to nature that it makes perfect sense for nature's mathematics to be our mathematics as well. Well, in the midst of all of that, there is good news. Because when we find ourselves headed toward an unwanted tipping point, nature gives us a way to set a new course with a new outcome. When I read that particular sentence, I've thought much about the teachings that I've done out of the Christian text in Psalms 82 that says to his gods, actually says that the God talks to its gods. In other words, it's talking to aspects of itself. Creator talking to creation. And it says, how long will you let the earth be off course? Do you not know who you are, that ye are gods and children of the Most High? Why do you lay down and die like the princes of the world? Why do you keep acting out the part of your world experience, your earth experience, and not allow your divine being work through the world experience? This is time for divinity and spirituality and enlightenment to move through us as ever before. And that's why we're called Heart Light, Spiritual Center, because we believe that light emanates out from the portal of the heart, out into the world in every direction. So again, a tipping point is a linear thing in which something is getting worse and worse and worse until it comes to a tipping point in which it becomes something that has caused a result that cannot be undone. So that means before we get there, we got to show up. You know, there's a lot of teachings. The one I'm most familiar with is the Christian idea of the fact that Jesus is coming, or in metaphysics we call that Christ consciousness is showing up. Some people in New Age are looking for the mothership to show up. Maybe some kind of people from another dimension or planet is going to show up, but something's going to show up. And disruption. And I believe that's got to be now. And the opportunity is now. It's been set for us. The stage is set for us to be able to move things into a turning point so it doesn't reach its tipping point. If it reaches to the tipping point, that's not good news. And the good news is that if it reaches tipping point, then we will be allowed to destroy ourselves as we know ourselves as a third dimensional human being. Now you say, I don't want to hear that, but you need to hear that. There's a scripture that's always fascinated me in Psalms 90:3, and it says, for God turneth man into to destruction to say, return, ye sons of men. And I thought, I don't want to believe in a God that would turn us to destruction. But really, it's saying God allows us to destroy ourselves through free will. So then it's talking about the fact that if we do that, then God just begins another cycle. So that's kind of our choice right now. Either we go into a place of destruction. Now, it doesn't mean that's punishment. Don't think that God destroys because God, and I'm hearing a lot of this right now. This is the great message of the fundamentalist, literalist people. Everything from God is destroying America because of homosexuality. That's one I heard recently. Or because abortions are going on. Everybody's got a reason that they're trying to validate the fact that God's punishing us. And that God would destroy us because we're such bad, sinful, horrible people. I don't know what kind of God you serve, but that's not the God that is the presence that is within me, this loving, kind God. But it's a God that does give us free will. So destruction just means destruction of old patterns. It means when things change their design that have come together to bring the design of molecules together to form matter. That can happen, but you can't destroy energy. That's one of the great laws of dynamics, is you cannot destroy energy, but you can change the pattern. So the energy will never be destroyed, will always be there, but the way it's designing itself into the world of the physical, of the world of matter, is what can be changed. If we don't, then we destroy the design. And then we have to go back into a new Genesis, and we have to have a new beginning, and we start all over again. Now, my challenge to all of us, can we be a generation that walks not as our forefathers? That's in Psalm 78. I see a generation to come that will not walk as their forefathers. I don't know how many generations of people have moved themselves to the tipping point of destroying themselves and not moving into their state of enlightenment. I don't know how many times we have had that cycle over and over again. People talk about Atlantis destroying itself because of its technology. But yet something began out of that. There is always a beginning out of the time in which something hits a tipping point in which it is moving itself into chaos. So, I'm asking you to step up now with me and with others all over the world who are hearing this message of the fact of reaching this critical mass. And we're going to be doing that here in Heartlight. I'm going to be talking about it Sunday, but we're going to actually do something about this. But we are going to join ourselves together to work in the field of what is breaking down and to help us to find a new turning point and direction before the tipping point happens. I don't know about you, but there's a few bubbles showing up in the water, and that's telling me that we're very close to the degree in which the boiling happens of the whole water, of the whole pot of water. So let's look at a turning point. We've seen examples of turning points in our lives or those of friends and family. They can happen spontaneously or they may be created intentionally. So there is in the bigger plan goes something like this, that everybody will end up back into God. That's the way I'm going to say it in its simplicity. There's a place that says everything came out of God, everything goes through God, and everything returns back to God. That's the big picture. It will happen in the end. Now, how we get there is up to us. Because we're co-creating this whole experience, then it's based on our choices and how we think and how we perceive that is going to create the process of how we get there. We can get there on an easier, following an easier direction, or we can follow the difficult one. Human beings seem to lean more toward the difficult way. And we need to relook at that and realize this is a time in which we can think again. Or, of course, America says, choose again. Jesus says, turn the other cheek. So there is two ways to do this. It's going to be done, or you can do it by entering into the process, and it could be spontaneously. We need something spontaneous to happen right now. And that's going to happen when enough people join themselves together in consciousness and intention to cause us to move from what is leading us to the tipping point to a turning point. A familiar example of a turning point would be when a friend or a family member undergoes successful surgery to correct a dangerous condition in his or her body. Whether it's removal of a life-threatening tumor or the repair of a vital organ, when such things happen, it's commonly said that the surgery has given our loved one a second chance. In other words, rather than continue the course of deterioration, now listen to this, that was leading to the tipping point of no return. So think about it. You go and you get a diagnosis that you have a disease. You've got cancer, you've got diabetes, you've got MS, you've got something like that. And then you can go in the early stages of it because you were aware enough. Now, I'm an example of that. I'm going to testify here. I sensed that something was not right with my lung in 2014. I had no symptoms. I just knew intuitively something was not right. Now, a few years before that, when I lived in Ohio, they'd found just a little blur on my lung, but they thought it was scar tissue from pneumonia. Didn't think about it. Moved to Charlotte, and then I had this feeling that I need to go have this checked out. And lo and behold, it had grown into a cancerous tumor. But it was stage 1. Now, cancer in the lung is one of the worst because it's not detectable until stage 4 or 5. It's usually what kills so many people. But because of the awareness of my intuition, I went and they found it so early that all they did, they sent me to Duke University, and they took out the top lung where the cancer was. After they did that, no chemo, no medications, it was over, and I've been cancer-free for over 5 years, which makes me a cancer survivor. Now, if I had not disrupted what was happening in me, if it had reached the tipping point, I would not be here talking to you today. But the fact that I intervened and took a different direction, I stopped the tipping point. Not only did it happen once, but it happened twice. In 2016, I felt like the fact that my dad had dropped dead instantly of a heart attack at 62 years old, that maybe I should just check my heart. And the guy says, well, let's just do the test. It'll give you some peace of mind. I'm sure everything is fine. They did the test, found out I had 4 blocked arteries, almost 90%. If I'd have had a heart attack, I would not be here talking to you today with that kind of blockage. But instead of waiting for the heart attack and possibly death, I had the surgery and changed the situation and took a different direction than I was on. Listen to this quote again that I gave you a while ago. If you do not change the direction, you may end up where you are heading. Now, all of this that's going on today in prophecy of doomsday and how bad it's going to be and Armageddon and all of that, these people don't realize that's the direction they're going. And they're putting their power into that direction. And it's going to be self-fulfilled prophecy if they don't change how they perceive what's going on as we head toward the future. When universal consciousness is allowed in, it disrupts the direction we're going toward the tipping point. So a tipping point is a complete change of direction, completely. There's an illustration, I think it's up there, I can't see it. But if you look at the line that is going up is the line we're on heading toward this linear point that's going on. Now, if you get on the linear point and just keep going in the linear, you're going to end up with a tipping point. But this is showing that at the point where they come together is what's called a choice point. This is something I've been talking about a long time. I can't remember his name, but it's Everett III that came out of Great Britain that told us about the choice point. That there are times in our life that we enter these places, this crossroads, where we can make a different point through choice for a different outcome. And the simple illustration I've used forever, if I get out here on a multi-lane interstate, for here in Charlotte, that'd be probably 77. And you get out there and you've got 4 lanes going on or whatever, and you're in a lane, and up above you a car is broken down. Now, if I stay in my lane, guess what? I'm going to end up with a terrible experience by staying in my lane. But wonder if I make a choice to change the lane and bypass it, and I have a different outcome. And I've encouraged everybody to do that. No matter what a doctor tells you or anybody tells you, realize that's just one lane. If you stay in that lane, then what? The thing that you believe is going to happen will happen, because your power is to fulfill your own vision. But if we decide to change our point, it makes all the difference in the world. So a choice point is a change in direction. So if you follow the line up and it curves out here and comes to that point between, then a new direction takes place. And instead of following toward the tipping point, you have a turning point into a completely new and different direction. I'm going to stop there, but I'm going to continue this next week. And we'll pick it up there because we want to talk about that space between the turning point and how powerful that it is. All right, for you that have your books, you can go with me to the page 19, chapter 3, and we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects. I love the fact when we come on the lessons here about lessons that I've been doing for years, and this is called Self-Knowledge on page 12 in your regular book, page 12. Self-knowledge. You know, I was raised in a religion where self was a bad word because that was being selfish, to think about yourself. It all had to be about God and Jesus and others, but never myself. And the main reason we did that is because of the perception that we were allowed to believe in self. That we believed that self was sinful, that self was bad, that self was our body only, and our body had all these human frailties called sins and iniquities, and therefore we wanted to get rid of that self. In fact, my spiritual awakening and calling at 17 years old was with a group of people out of Jeffersonville, Indiana, that's over the river in Louisville, called the Crucified Way people. And these people believed that we had to do everything to crucify our flesh, our body. And I was naive. I just wanted to do what they said. So I spent hours sometimes on my face on a cold floor like I was on a cross. And I would lay there until the skin on my nose would be totally bloody, because I was crucifying myself. Everything that I had a desire for, I had to crucify because it wasn't God. And I don't know about you, but my conclusion of that experience was the more I tried to crucify self, the more self became stronger. So that was a horrible experience for me, but there's a lot of people who believe that we need to get rid of self. So, yes, we do need to diminish and undo the self that we were not created to be. We've taught that for so long here, that we have two perceptions of self. We have a perception that is a more true perception of self as a divine spiritual self. And then we have this self over here that we have allowed ourselves to become based on outside information and labels that have been put upon us. So we start believing that self is based upon our identity. Self is our racial identity. Self is our gender identity. Self is our political affiliation. I mean, there's so many things that we think we are that we became because outside culture and society told us we were and formed that into us, that we became a self that was not created, but we became a self that we have miscreated. It's called in psychology a pseudo-self or ego. Now that needs to be undone. You don't have to declare war on darkness. All you have to do is bring the light in. That's just simple common sense. That if I walk into this building tonight when it's dark, I have no reason to start fighting the dark because the light isn't here. All I'm going to do is go to the switch and turn the light on, and the darkness will dispel in the presence of the light. So I'm not here to declare war on my ego or on myself. I'm just more and more feeding the true self that I am, and the light of it will diminish and diminish the ego self. So the true self is the divine self, the spiritual self, the authentic self is called today. And that self we need to love. We need to feed it with spiritual, with meditation, with reading of spiritual principles and divine law. All these things that we do, many of us, are feeding our spiritual self, our divine soul, which is becoming more and more awakened, and more light is taking away and diminishing the darkness that has been in us as a pseudo-self. Now, this is not new to a lot of you that has been with me for so long and have been in the classes here and also before I came to Heartlight. And that is when you get information of any kind outside of yourself, do not react to it immediately. Do not say, I like what I read. I'm going to qualify it as a belief. You don't want to do that. I've changed what I thought I believed thousands of times in 55 years. I thought I believed this, then I found more information. I looked at it and I said, no, I'm going to tweak that belief, and now I got a different kind of way of believing, and I thought that was it, and then I got a little deeper. I found more information. I did more research, and I said, no, that isn't quite it. So I changed that belief, and I kept changing my belief system. So beliefs are very fragile in the fact of the availability of knowledge and information that is available to us. So, I want to know more than what I read out there that I believe, because there's a lot of things I like what I hear, and I'd like to believe that, but does it resonate with my innate intelligence center? Now, I know everybody wants to blame, not blame, but they want to look at a little baby that comes in and is just born as a clean slate. There's nothing. That baby is beginning is when it is born. Well, first of all, I don't think that is correct, because I think at least you got to go back to the time of conception and the experiences in utero, in gestation, also is receiving information vibrationally at all times. But to you that go back before that, realize maybe if you're a believer in past lives, that you got all the past lives, how many there are, has accumulated itself as your experiences that you've qualified as kind of a file that is in your soul called the Akashic file. And everybody, there's a universal file, there's a global file, there's a galactic file, and there's a personal file. And that file holds all of the experiences And the way you experience those experiences, it becomes new knowledge that is within you all the time. So what we teach is when you get information, even if it's coming from me, for you that listen to my teachings, don't take what I say immediately and say, well, I like that, I'm going to believe that. No, I invite you to bring it into contemplation. Contemplate all information and all knowledge that you're exposed to outside of yourself. When you bring it into contemplation, which is a neutral place, and do not judge it right or wrong, good or bad. Now that's the first reaction I get. I read something, I go, oh, that's good. Then I turn the page, I read something, oh no, that's not so good. So I'm going to take this one because it was good. But did it resonate to awaken my innate intelligence, self-knowledge? The most powerful thing that you can put into your belief system is what is resonated inside of you that was already there. Yes, a book can remind you. A teacher, a facilitator can remind you. Yes, even watching a movie in some cases can remind you. There's many things that stimulate us out here that can remind us of what we have forgotten. And this little system in the Holy Spirit, the function of it is called the Holy Spirit to some of us. It's other names for it, but I like Holy Spirit. It is the part of my spirit that has stayed whole and holds the information of divine blueprint. That is off limits to ego. That is off limits to anything outside of myself. It is the sacred place within me that is always remains in its pure state. And that's where we go when we say, let's go within and let's meditate and whatever. We're trying to get to that place, that sacred place, which gives us a time out of the busyness of the ego world, of thought, analyzation, perception, all of that takes so much of our energy. We go into the quietness of the knowing state, the sacred state that is within us. So if I'm saying something to you right now and you are going to contemplate it, and I really am going to encourage you, and I meant to say this in the beginning, for you to go and get a pencil and paper and take notes. Don't just listen, because you're going to forget most of everything that's been said in this hour. You're going to retain very, very little of it on a mental human consciousness. And what you don't retain goes into your subconscious, because your subconscious is going to hold millions of bits of data based upon your everyday awareness of human consciousness, which is very, very small. So you've got to take notes. You've got to revisit notes. I would say revisit this class. You've got it as a download. Sometime this week, you've got the time. Take a little time to re-listen to it. So the point is, in this whole self-knowledge thing, is that you contemplate it and you wait until you have that epiphany. That's what it's called, an epiphany. It is a knowing explosion of energy that comes into a place in which it becomes that part of you that becomes an awareness, an expanded awareness of your consciousness. So the experience would be, if I hear someone say something or I read something that is good, I just had that knowing that was right. It wasn't, should I believe it or not? It was, I have a knowing, a epignosis, it's called, experience of knowing what it's about. So today, I invite you in this last couple of minutes to just stop and take a moment to go back within again. Enter into your heart space. And with gratitude, thank your heart for the intelligence it holds. For many, many, many decades and centuries, we have thought that all the intelligence was in the head. But today that has been proved to be incorrect. That we were not aware of the energetic neurons that are 40% out of the head in the heart. This is science. And it's in that information that you have the experience of knowing. Remember, the Holy Spirit is here to guide you and lead you into all truth and to bring you into remembrance of only what you have forgotten. When you have an epiphany and a knowing, and that has your self-I am code on it. It's not the I am universal code. It is your individualization of the one code. That's how karma finds you. You know, if we didn't have an individualization of the I am that we are, then how would something know how to get back to us that we put out? It might end up with somebody else. But the fact we all have this unique, what I call I am code, that is it is your signature. The Bible calls it your new name in heaven. It is that part of you that is individualized to be able to experience your own choices and your own experiences as you follow your path to the no path. So today I invite you to tap in to the knowing. I know it's hard to know what to believe about this time of this experience we're going through. Why did it happen? Why is it happening to me and to my family? Or why is it happening to someone you know? These are always the questions of the ego mind, because it's the fact that it asks questions it can't answer. And in the fact that the answer is not answered becomes doubt and fear, anxiety in the absence. But when we drop into the heart and the intelligence of the heart, we have the knowing, no, I don't understand it, I can't analyze it, I can't figure it out, but I have a knowing that it's all working for the higher purpose. I know that God understands and sees it for what it is, as an opportunity for us, for me to grow and to mature, to evolve. I know that all things are well in God and in spirit. When you know these things, then you diminish the anger, the fear, and the frustration that's in the brain because of the fact we can't figure it out. So you can't figure out and you can't know what's in the brain, but you can know from the heart and not worry about figuring it out. I don't have to figure this out. I don't have to analyze it. I don't have to know, did it start in China? Did it start, oh my God, I've heard all kinds of ideas and perceptions and conspiracy theories about where all this started. It's here. Where do I go from here? Where do I go is I don't want to reach that tipping point, but I want to have that experience of the turning point. Turning from death to life, turning from degeneration to regeneration, turning from disease and sickness to health and regeneration, from anxiety to peace of mind, from fear to love, love for the divine plan and purpose of God, in which I know is working for the highest good. I don't have to believe it, I know it. If I didn't, then I'm not going to be very strong in this time. Listen to your heart. Practice heart meditation. Please do that. Take the time and experience the knowings of your life. Then when you know, you can believe it. And when you believe what you know, you change the vibratory frequency of your belief system, which so many of us have learned drives cellular replication. That's when your cells start replicating at a higher frequency from the knowing as a frequency for the thing you believe. Divine Holy Spirit, Mother, Father, God, we thank you for this time together today. We thank you for even this technology that has not totally separated us. But even though we're not together, we are together. We're together through technology and spirit and in mind and in consciousness. Divine Heavenly Father, Mother God, bless those that are with us today. Bless their homes. Fill their homes with love, their hearts with patience. And let the light of God be upon their doorposts over their household, that they be passed over protected and safe in this time. We ask this in the wonderful name of the living Christ, and so it is. I want to thank you again for joining us today. In just a moment, we're going to go on Zoom for you that can do Zoom. If you don't, ask your kids or grandkids, even over the phone. They can show you how to do it. And some of us that have been a little stubborn about this, I would suggest you revisit that idea and realize that we are being pushed to learn things that we don't want to learn because it's not the old norm. So move into the new norm and realize that you are intelligent enough with a little help to learn how to get on Zoom, and we can then see each other together if you'd like to join us with that. Also remember, your support is so important, and thank you so much how that we made it through the really first month of this, and now we're in the second month and you're stepping up again. But keep the class also supported, and we so appreciate it. So you can get on there now and you can send it through PayPal, through credit card. You can also send it to 7300 Mallard Creek Road to us here in Charlotte, and we appreciate all of you that are supporting us at this time. Remember, Sunday morning at 11:15, we'll be back with you with a very special message on Sunday morning. So I'm going to invite you again that any of these Sunday morning messages or class messages that you feel can be shared with your friends and people that you feel are somewhat searching, that they're open-minded and open-hearted. Let's spread the word. I got called this week from West Virginia. I had emails from Arkansas. I had places from all over that was beyond the four walls of this building. And so this is a wonderful outreach that we're doing. Florida, I heard from, Ohio, all over. A lot of states are joining us because they can be here now. Even though they couldn't be here because the physical location wasn't the same, they can be here now through technology. So this is a wonderful time of outreach, and we want to appreciate all of you for doing that. So, all right, for you that are going to join us on Zoom, we will do that in just a very few moments. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day, and know that you are in a garden of safety, a garden of light and protection, and may the Archangel Michael surround your home. May all the angels surround your environment and your home with protection and with love and with healing. And so it is.